Hello and welcome to CBD Shorts. I'm your host Ethan, and today's topic is going to be about creating comics. I'm going to discuss the roles of everyone who works together to make the actual comic itself, which includes writers, pencilers, inkers, colorists, letterers, and the editors. So let's start off with the writers. Writers are the backbone of the creative team. Their vision and concepts are the biggest factors in the final product. In the words of Will Eisner, the job of a writer is to deal with, quote, the conception of an idea, the arrangement of image elements, and the construction of the sequences of the narration and the composing of dialogue. End quote. And while the work of a writer varies from each company, the writer often plays the role of a guide, describing to the artists and the rest of the team their vision, and they make the script clear so that it can be interpreted and understood for different people and different purposes. The main challenge for writers is becoming so familiar with their artists and creative teams that they can effectively play off the capabilities of each member, capitalizing on the strengths and shying away from the weaknesses. Synergy is highly important for a successful writer. The second people we're going to be discussing is the pencilers. They're often the artists that are credited on the cover, and they are the first part of most comics' creative processes. As such, they are usually the most in contact with the writer, and depending on the writer that the penciler is working with, it will often fall to the artists to decide on what panel, layout, and angles will best fit the purposes of the story as outlined by the writer. Sometimes, even when the layout is indicated, artists have the freedom to interpret the scenes in their own ways through collaboration still with the writer. With many comics, especially earlier on, the pencilers did not go into extreme detail. They would rely upon the inkers or embellishers, as some know them, to add fine details for them. However, out of personal preference, an artist may choose to do all the detail on their own. The two roles are tied very closely together, however, so the preferences can naturally rise between the two. And the inker, who I mentioned already, that's going to be our next topic. Inkers are often underappreciated. They're written off as the guy who traces stuff, but their role in the art process is incredibly important. Inkers often add depth, shading, and expression over otherwise unfinished art. Often, aside from simply making every line more visible, inkers help form the mood through the shadowing and fine details that the artist may have chosen to exclude. They set the mood through color and really bring the reader into the story. They frequently have the freedom also to twist things they feel need twisting and create the realism in tone and figures that would otherwise be non-existent. Frequently also, pencilers may not include full backgrounds or clothing features, a task left to the inker. Like I said previously, the style of each inker can form subtly different moods through sharp lines, soft lines, and everything in between. Textures and shadows are also often absent or minimal before an inker takes the comic, and facial expressions often are subdued. Traditionally, this is done with pens or brushes, but more and more by digital artistry. Next up, we have the colorist. They are arguably the biggest influence in the mood of a comic book. The ambience and unique features of each series' colors can make or break art pieces and highlight the intention of each panel. Their job involves a high level of familiarity with the synergist properties of colors, as well as the values needed to produce certain moods and effects. They take the work of the penciler and inker, compounding it with effects and techniques of their own. The work of the previous artist is important in determining shading and such, but color can't usually be indicated with purely black and white lines. As such, colorists must interpret each page, deciding the lighting and textures that will appear and the vibrancy of each color. All panels are meticulously shaped to give the desired effect and instill the sense of the story on the reader. It can prompt emotion, control the eye, even tell subtle stories about each character and setting. The next part of the creative process is the letterer. The letterer is another frequently undervalued position. Letterers are often responsible for the creation of eye-catching, memorable logos, as well as adding the dialogue in a readable and unobscuring manner. As one of the jobs only recognized when done poorly, letterers often don't receive credit for the challenge presented by warping the dialogue to fit around and leave pristine the art. Sometimes the letterers are even responsible for forming the dialogue that fills each page, as with Marvel method of writing. Writers outline a basic plot, and the details are added by the letterers, and then writers outline a basic plot, goes through the creative process, but the details are added by the letterers. They also impact the tone of each character, emphasizing and enunciating words to add the desired effect. This text and lettering adds dynamism to each page, propelling the action forward in dialogue that is far more important in creating than one might think. Their work involves not only the font and appearance of each dialogue balloon, but also the sound effects and logos that make each page come alive. Last but not least are the editors. These, like each other job we've overviewed, vary greatly in role depending on the creative team. They generally oversee each step of a comic book creation with little interference. Editors adapt to the team, figuring out what best to target in order to produce quality content in a timely manner. Often, editors will be in collaboration with other creative teams to organize events and character plot lines so the other members don't have to. The line is balanced between involvement and interference as editors try to facilitate the creative process as best they can, whilst allowing the creative team to do their own thing. Above all, they are peers and there to help the team, giving an outsider's perspective on decisions and granting criticisms with solution. Dialogue between team and editor can be vital in ironing out everything for a final draft. Alright, so that concludes our overview of the creative comic book process. I hope you enjoyed it. That concludes our CBD short. Sorry for the awkward pauses and misreads of a couple of names. These ones are scripted, unlike the podcasts, though we don't sound much better in those either. You can find us on our CBD podcasts on YouTube, Spreaker, our website, which is comicbookdirect.weebly.com. We have it if you want to contact us for the podcast or about CBD shorts. We do try to go through all of our comments, and you can email us at comicbookdirect@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think of this, and have a great rest of the week.